just to remind you a few of the questions that we're thinking about here. What are the strengths and weaknesses of this commentary? Yeah. How could it be improved? Well, I'll put how/where. And then maybe how would you grade it based on the criteria for each category out of 5? Did anyone think about that? Maybe let's talk about these first, and then we could try to come to a consensus on how we might grade it. I actually have the marks that it received, the comments from the examiner, so that could be interesting to look at the end. Does anyone have right off the top of their head, a strength or a weakness that they?
I have a question.
Sure.
And during the test, do you mind us to bring a dictionary or something like that? Because at the moment we are writing, we always use outside resources to help us to write. For example, some word we don't know how to spell, or something that we don't know how to to exactly describe. So do you mind us exactly bring a little information dictionary?
You know, because I want this to be the purpose of this sort of mock paper 1 is to prepare you for what the real paper 1 is going to be like. And for that exam, you're not going to be able to bring anything into it. So I'm going to say no dictionaries. I'll consider letting you use one of the dictionaries that I had in here. But were you talking about like an electronic?
Yeah, I'm talking about a paper-made dictionary.
Okay.
Because, for example, because we're international, maybe we want to use some words that
sure.
How exactly that word should be like.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand that. The only thing is you won't be able to do that on the IB exam next year, right? So it might be better for you to get used to that feeling of not being able to rely on that. But I'll consider letting you use one of the dictionaries in here, but I'm going to say no, like Chinese to English or any other language dictionaries. Yeah. Basically, I'm asking you to just bring a pen or a pencil, nothing else on your desk. Okay.
Well, this commentary is good at saying the effects of features on the audience.
Sorry, I'm not sure everyone heard.
It's good at talking about the effects of the features on the audience,
Okay.
the stylistic features.
Could you bring us to a specific place, I think, so everyone can check it out?
Yeah.
Like maybe give us a paragraph number if you can.
Some time ago.
Yeah, that's fine. Take your time. While he's finding that, just if we could save questions about the format of the exam or the actual exam period just until the end, I'll try to leave 5 minutes at the end. And any questions you have about that, I'll answer. Yeah, Charlie?
I think he does a good job at breaking down the different paragraphs. Like in the second one, he talks about the structure, then the third is the theme, force and language. So you can tell that he pretty much hit all the criteria. I'm just trying to make sure all of those are in there. Yeah, I think.
Or at least the majority of them, right? And he does a nice job organizing them. Does that apply to what you're saying?
Yeah, I don't know. I just felt like it flowed through.
Or she, I guess this could also be a she. Okay, good.
He or she has a clear statement about what the passage is about and kind of what they're exploring.
Where's that?
Like at the front,
Yeah, so right at the beginning, trying to demonstrate an understanding of sort of the major theme of the passage. Let's read through that first paragraph quickly. Does anyone feel like they have, all six sentences there? Sure.
Paper one standard level student response to the African American literature.
Sorry, could you just crank it up?
Yeah. This passage is about the beauty of language and the loss of language written by a first-person narrator. The passage was taken from the language of African American literature. This implies that the implied producer would be the author or first-person writer. However, the actual producer could be the variety of editors or publishers that have evaluated the text. The circumstance of this text is to depict how the language of African literature was demolished as a countries colonized Kenya. The writer would be from Kenya, hence we can assume that the book was published in Kenya. Or maybe actually published in another country, interested in the language of African literature. The context of reception and receivers would imply to be African people. However, the actual audience could range from university students studying literature, teachers, students, language analysts, and many more. The discourse and cultural perspective would be for English speakers who are interested in the language of African literature. Additionally, the discourse can be further linked to a loss of identity through language. The context of production could be to sell the book and the idea of African literature, though in context of reception, the message that this passage conveys is one of African person's story.
Boogie?
Yeah. Of the loss of identity through language. Fundamentally, the purpose of the passage is to illustrate the importance of what language meant to a group of patriotic people living in Kenya. Nonetheless, the dominant purpose is the loss of identity through language.
What sticks out to you about this paragraph? There's no right answer here.
It talks about the reading a lot.
Okay, focuses on the text. Yeah, that's great.
This actually very detailing because it's from like maybe the people who possibly who write it to like what it's really talking about, and also to like more detailed things from the countries.
I like how he talks about two different types of context, context of reception and context of production. I found that very interesting.
Okay, yeah. One thing I notice about it is he really considers, he makes a point to consider multiple angles or interpretations. He doesn't just kind of assume the first thing. Once again, I'm saying he, it's just easier. She doesn't just assume the first like context, for example, that she thinks of. She says it could be this, but it could also be this. She makes some assumptions, but then she kind of, like for example, the writer would be from Kenya, hence we can assume that the book was published in Kenya, though it may actually be published in another country interested in the language of African literature. The context of reception, the receivers would imply, there's some grammatical mistakes in this obviously, but would be implied to be the African people. However, the actual audience could range from university students studying literature, teachers, students, language analysts, and many more. So not just settling on kind of the first answer that she thinks of, or the easiest answer, but pushing herself to consider more than one option. I think that's one strength of this piece.